Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We'll get started in one moment. Just want to give folks a chance to log on. Welcome, everyone. Excellent. Well, thank you all very much for joining today's webinar. We are very excited for today's conversation, Equitable, Not Equal, How Employee Benefits Impact LGBTQ+ Workplace Belonging. Despite significant progress, LGBTQ+ people often face health disparities and don't receive access to equitable health care. And organizations that are invested in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts can address this by ensuring their health benefits are designed for all of their employees' needs. Inclusion isn't just a box to check, it's an approach an organization takes to everything in the workplace, including benefits. I am just thrilled to be moderating today's conversation and to learn more about LGBTQ+ inclusive healthcare and inclusion offerings. So for those of you that I don't yet know, hello, my name is Isabel Porras. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Director of Learning and Development here at Out and Equal. I'm joined today with a couple of our partners, and I'll let them introduce themselves so we can start this excellent conversation. And Brad, we'll start with you.
Hello, everybody. Brad Baumoel. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I'm the Global Head of LGBTQ+ Affairs at JPMorgan Chase.
Excellent. Well, welcome, Brad. Happy to have you. Colin, what about you? Welcome.
Thanks, Isabel. Excited to be here. Hello, everyone. My name is Colin Quinn. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the president of communities at Included Health.
Excellent. Well, thank you both again for joining us today. I'm really excited to get our conversation going. I know that our audience is going to be able to gain some real valuable insights on how to support our LGBTQ+ employees in and out of the workplace. But before we get started today, I want to take a quick minute to reflect on today, May 17th. The International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. So IDAHOBIT or IDAHOBIT, depending on how you pronounce it, was created in 2004 to draw attention to the discrimination and violence that lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, and other people with diverse sexual orientations, gender identities, or sex characteristics may face. The International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia is currently recognized in over 130 countries with thousands of initiatives taking place around the globe. And just to set the stage for what we'll be discussing shortly, we know there is still more work to be done. Despite progress, LGBTQ+ people continue to face discrimination and barriers to employment. And in fact, the Boston Consulting Group has found that about 40% of LGBTQ+ employees are closeted at work today, and that 75% are reporting experiencing negative day-to-day workplace interactions related to their identity. Again, this workplace experience, unfortunately, continues to be a common theme across the country. But in recent years, companies are focusing heavily on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And so I'm excited to have our colleagues here share some thought leadership into the work they've been doing to elevate the LGBTQ+ community in the workplace. So Brad, I'd actually love to start with you. Can you give us a peek into JPMorgan Chase and the amazing work that the Office of LGBTQ+ Affairs is leading?
Absolutely. And thank you, Isabel. So happy to be here today. So as of this year, I've actually been at JPMorgan Chase for 30 years. During my time here, I've held many roles across our businesses, but since I came out at work, which was 25 years ago, I've consistently been engaged with our LGBTQ+ initiatives, of course, outside of my day job, through our Pride Business Resource Group, through our line of business LGBTQ+ efforts, as well as on our LGBTQ+ Executive Council. I like to think I helped create a lot of the structure of how our business resource groups operate today. And along the way, I helped us deliver many significant advancements towards LGBTQ plus equity and inclusion. Now, my role and leadership for our community for those 25 years, I think helped lead me to my current job, which is the serving as global head of LGBTQ plus affairs. I established the team back in 2021 as part of our global DE&I organization. I still think we are the only and first of our kind business focused on driving equity and inclusion for the LGBTQ plus community. That's both inside and outside of our firm. And this is building on all the great work we've done for the community for decades now, but now with an even more intentional and global focus on our commitment. I think it's also important to note, because we're talking about workplaces, we all have to get it right inside first. If we can't demonstrate equity and inclusion for our employee base around the world, we can't turn that outside, which is what we're also doing at JPMorgan Chase. So internally, we are focused on best-in-class policies and benefits and truly end-to-end talent management for our global workforce. Outside, for clients and business customers, we're now focused intentionally on financial health, education resources, business coaching, access to venture capital funding for LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs, while equally being focused in uplifting communities around the globe through, like we are with you, Isabel, nonprofit partnerships and active community engagement. But what's truly amazing at JPMorgan Chase is we've embedded LGBTQ plus DE&I into every aspect of how we do business. No other major corporation has a full-time dedicated global team solely focused on LGBTQ plus equity and inclusion. Through my office, we're truly making a long-term impact on the LGBTQ plus workforce, and it's super exciting.
That's excellent. I'm very excited to get a little bit deeper into that, particularly some of the healthcare benefits that you all have offered. So again, thank you for sharing. We really are honored to partner with you personally and with JPMorgan Chase, and excited to highlight all the amazing work the office is doing. So I want to pause here, as I think this is a great segue to what we'd like to discuss next. And Colin, I'd like to turn it over to you now. And can you help us get some insight into what are some of the challenges that the LGBTQ plus community faces when trying to access healthcare more specifically today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an important conversation to be having, because absolutely everything that Brad was talking about is paramount, is cornerstone, is incredibly important to have within the workplace. And a major component of that equity and inclusion within a workplace is belonging, and a sense of access to benefits, right? Can we bring our whole self to work? Can we be our healthy, truest self in those ways? So a major component of this is healthcare. What we do at Included Health is creating better healthcare experiences, navigating members to get access to care they need and deserve with that lens of that dedicated support. Before we built our offering and brought it to market, it was incredibly important for us to understand what is the current healthcare experience like for members of the LGBTQ plus community. So we set out and conducted a large research study where we partnered with large Fortune 100 companies across the entire US, and we partnered with their Pride BRGs or ERGs to survey members to understand, what's your current healthcare experience look like today? What are the challenges that you're having? What are the health disparities that you face? In an ideal world, how would you like your healthcare to work and function? And we got some pretty alarming and eye-opening responses and data. As you can see here, this is the results of that study from back in early 2020, getting about 1,500 responses to us. So again, a very large and representative data set. And it's really bucketed into 4 key themes. So first, members are saying, I'm having difficulty accessing and finding providers that meet my needs. And again, don't forget, these are individuals that come from large Fortune 500 companies or Fortune 100 companies that have rich benefits ecosystems in place. And so our needs are still not being met by that existing healthcare system. So as you can see, challenges with primary care and behavioral health in particular. The second theme was uncovering there's a lot of negative experiences that members of our community have as it pertains to going out and accessing and getting connected to healthcare. Unfortunately, as a result of those negative experiences, there's a lack of trust that has been built up. So therefore, 35% of members saying, you know what, healthcare is not for me. I don't know who I can trust. I don't know where I can turn to. I'm just going to postpone or avoid my care. That's not a good thing. We don't deserve that as LGBTQ plus people. We deserve access to safe, affirming, and quality care. Third is around health risks. We know our community suffers and experiences the same health disparities and needs as the broader population, but we are disproportionately impacted when it comes to anxiety and depression. So higher rates there, which is incredibly important that we have those safe entry points to behavioral health and mental health as well. And then lastly, the fourth theme was around utilization of services. And we found that members of our community are more likely to utilize the hospital and ER. And it's not because we're sicker or because we need to do that. Or choose to use that as our point of entry. Nobody that I know wants to go to the ER, number one, right? But what the data is telling us is because we're having difficulty accessing and finding providers, because we don't feel safe engaging with them, we're not building those primary care relationships. So our needs are going unmanaged over time. Oftentimes we hear from members saying, I haven't been to the doctor in 6, 8, or 10 years. So at which point we have to go to the hospital or ER once a need emerges. So really, again, quite alarming data here. But the good news is there are companies, organizations doing a lot of good work like JPMorgan Chase, like ours at Included Health, to really create these safe and welcoming environments, pull that care forward to ensure members get the care they need when they need it.
Thank you, Colin, for sharing these findings. I mean, it really is eye-opening. I'm certainly reflecting back on my own experiences, and I'm sure many of us on the call have had similar, unfortunately, negative experiences in our healthcare journeys. So it's really eye-opening to see this disparity. I'm particularly struck by the anxiety and depression diagnoses, the difficulty finding a mental health provider, especially coupled with the fact that this is, if I understand correctly, a pre-COVID survey, right? So knowing the increased rates in the last few years, I can only imagine that the need has really increased. So again, thank you for that. I'm going to actually pull us all into a discussion now. Let me get these slides out of the way so we can sort of see each other's faces a bit better. There we go. That's a lot nicer. So yeah, it's obvious that JPMorgan Chase has partnered with Included Health to deliver a similar healthcare experience for their LGBTQ plus employees. So I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. For you, Brad, your goals for supporting and empowering LGBTQ employees, and how this led you to looking at your healthcare benefits in the first place through this LGBTQ plus lens. So Brad, could you walk us through JPMorgan Chase's journey, how you first assessed the benefits offering, and really what initiated the need to even consider the specific needs of this LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again, Isabel. So I like to think, and I know I'm biased, right, because I've been here 30 years, but I like to think we've historically been amongst a number of leaders when it comes to LGBTQ plus benefits and policies. I look back, we were like one of the first Wall Street firms to make domestic partner benefits available to same-sex partners of employees, something I personally took advantage of in its earliest of days. We were one of the first U.S. financial firms to offer comprehensive transgender healthcare benefits to U.S. employees, and then extended those to a number of global countries. That being said, we also recognized we could do a lot more to meet the diverse and evolving needs of our LGBTQ plus workforce. We also spent some time talking to other firms about what they were doing, something Out and Equal does really well in bringing us together to share best practices and pain points and lessons learned. Through those efforts, we learned a lot about what others were doing. We shared a lot about what we were doing, and we realized we had to do more. For instance, on transgender employees, there were a number of procedures and types of care that we realized we were lacking from our core suite of offerings. That those were like out of the box, like you get these if you need them. So working with our Gender Expansive Council and our Global Benefits team back in 2022, we closed all of those gaps, and we were able to greatly enhance these offerings to ensure we're meeting the full needs of our transgender and gender expansive workforce, as well as their covered dependents. Today, I truly believe we are best in class in this space, at least in the United States. We also realized there was a lot more we could be doing to address the full spectrum of LGBTQ plus health and well-being. And this is exactly where Included Health came in. Having a dedicated concierge service that our employees can access and use to connect with affirming providers and care coordinators, and simply to navigate our healthcare system, which isn't simple. I mean, big corporations have big complex systems. Being able to leverage Included Health across our LGBTQ plus workforce is making a huge difference. And, I have to say, our global benefits team are amazing. So they were with us at the table the whole way, helping lead efforts for us and for the community. So I think we all know, right? And Colin spoke to it before, LGBTQ plus people continue to experience violence, discrimination, stigma, and so many barriers to affordable healthcare, to accessing the right service providers, to getting the right and necessary medication. Included Health helps us address these barriers for our employees, at least in the US, creating a truly safe space for our employees to seek and access the care they actually need.
I love that. Thank you, Brad. And so I'm just to sort of recap here, I'm hearing you say a couple of the lessons here, really working with trans and gender expansive colleagues to sort of assess what exists and what off the shelf you could bring in. I think that's a really good point. And Colin, I'd love to know, does this story sound familiar to some of your other clients? Are there similar sort of analyses and assessments that folks take internally?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see. We have the opportunity or privilege to have a kind of longitudinal viewpoint, and we speak to lots of organizations and recognize there are a lot of different priorities, different needs, different approaches, different industries, but there are some common themes across this. It typically starts within the BRG or within kind of an advocacy group within the organization to say, hey, like, is anyone else kind of coming across this problem and challenge? Like, we could do better as an organization to support our fellow coworkers. So kind of banding together, gathering that information, and then building that really great partnership with the benefits team, because ultimately at the end of the day, benefits teams owns the prioritization, the roadmap, and that decision to partner with vendors to be able to make these benefits available. So oftentimes we either see it starting at the benefits team, and then they work closely with the ERGs and BRGs, or it starts within the ERG or BRG and then working with the benefits team. But what Brad is talking about, I think, really is a best practice to foster a really productive and healthy relationship between your benefits teams. So then whenever needs or questions like this arise, you've already got that relationship built, and it's a much smoother and simpler process.
Yes. And speaking of trust, and there's trust built in already with the benefits team, knowing that it's taking into account those stakeholders. It's a really great point. So Colin, I'd love to come back to you for a moment. And since we're talking about this, particularly for those who may be unfamiliar, can you provide a quick overview of what exactly we mean when we're talking about this LGBTQ plus health offering? And I think you have some data. So let me actually bring my slide back up. There we go.
Absolutely. This does a nice job kind of putting it in perspective for us here. So our LGBTQ plus offering, as Brad was alluding to and talking about, is really powered by a dedicated and representative care team. This is incredibly important because of the data and statistics I previously shared, where there's a lot of negative experiences, unfortunately, that our community faces and that lack of trust. So we have created a care team and hired a care team that's representative of our community. That way members should feel and can feel really safe and comfortable picking up the phone or engaging through the app to connect with their dedicated care coordinator. And that person is going to be their health advocate, their friend, their support as they navigate their entire health, wellness, and life journey. We try to distill it down into 3 things that we do, but of course, it's much broader than that. We say we connect, guide, and advocate for members. So really a major component of this is connecting members to affirming and clinically competent providers that are in network within their benefits. So really optimizing the provider networks that are available, and then connecting members, helping to schedule the appointments on their behalf, really high touch concierge type approach. Across all provider types and specialties. It can be those complex specialist visits, or it could be something so routine as a dental appointment. I don't know about you, but I hate having to schedule my dental appointment every 6 months. If I can outsource that to somebody else, like, bravo, that's amazing. One less thing I have to worry about. So it can be the very simple things like that, or the more complex things as we support our trans community through access to gender affirming care, gender affirming hormones, or through family planning and other aspects as well as our broader community. Next is guiding our members. As Brad talked about, healthcare is very complex. I come from healthcare and I still struggle with it sometimes, right? And oftentimes your employers do a really great job of providing rich benefits to you, but it's a little bit of a maze and understanding what is the benefit, what is the coverage, how in the heck do I access this? So we optimize, our team becomes experts within that to help optimize that for you to make it more simpler and smoother. And then lastly is advocating for our members. This extends beyond the traditional means of healthcare, because as an LGBTQ plus individual, we have things come up in our life that we want support with, or that we need connections with, that kind of extends beyond healthcare. So examples here are offering support for employees who are parents of LGBTQ plus youth. When I was creating this aspect of our business, I was thinking about my mom in this situation. When I came out to her, I turned her world upside down. And she really struggled in that moment, and she could have benefited from speaking to a care coordinator that could connect her with information and resources, to another parent that has recently had a child come out to them, or maybe to a local PFLAG chapter and say, everything is going to be okay. Colin is going to be great and he's going to thrive. So thinking about those aspects, another example would be, it's a very nomadic life that we get to live in this kind of virtual remote world. So members are saying, hey, you know what? I'm still with my current employer, but I'm moving from New York to Miami, or New York to San Francisco, somewhere else, right? Can you help me maybe find some social support groups in that new area? Maybe I don't have that many friends there yet. So thinking about that, or coming out in the workplace as well. So again, those are just other examples of advocacy and support that we're able to offer. But really kind of from that high level, no question is too simple or complex. We are here to support you and be that guide through your health and wellness journey.
That's really impressive, particularly I think in the last few years of we've seen more and more parents of LGBTQ kids really looking to their resource group, really looking to LGBTQ inclusion in the workplace, knowing that they have this health benefit available to support their children is quite powerful as well. So thank you for that. All right, let me bring back the slide so we can see each other again. I'd love to now ask both of you, really curious to hear any success stories. So this program sounds amazing. I'd love to hear some of the impact that it's had on employees. And maybe Brad, if we can start with you, how has LGBTQ plus health impacted JPMorgan employees? And do you have any perhaps success stories that you can share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So these changes are absolutely positive, and we've received a ton of great feedback. But don't get me wrong, like, we're a huge corporation, and with Included Health, we're still learning together and evolving. Great example of that is when we started our relationship with Included Health, we could only access them through talking. Like, we had to use their audio line to open a profile, to seek care. And just 2 weeks ago now, we rolled out an online service so that we could do a lot of the work. I mean, talking is still there, but now we could do combination of both online and voice. So we're still growing together, which is kind of amazing. But I am hearing lots of great feedback from our employees. A couple great examples, not complete quotes because I've tweaked them a little bit, but I've had employees say, wow, these services are incredible. There's so much I can get to through my care coordinator, amazing services to get to exactly the type of healthcare I need. Such great choices. Others have said they're care coordinators, so the person assigned to them to help them navigate to the right solution have been amazing. They've been truly grateful for their vulnerability and honesty and transparency, so much so that some have said they've taken a lot of the stress away around getting to healthcare. Others have been truly grateful because they've found exactly the type of care they need in network specialists. And they've also said that their care coordinators have expressed genuine kindness. I had a transgender employee come to us and say they were going through a lot of self-consciousness one day because of their voice. And being able to connect with a care provider who was also transgender completely left them at ease. So these are the types of sound simple, but are so powerful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is incredibly impressive. And Colin, love to hear some examples from you, especially since you do have that sort of broad longitudinal view here. What other success stories can you share with us?
Yeah, absolutely happy to. And Brad, thank you for sharing those. They give me chills and goosebumps. That this is why we're in this business, to create better healthcare experiences for our community. No one deserves to have a less than optimal healthcare experience, and together we're recreating and fixing that. So it's been an absolute honor to be able to partner with you all on this. A couple of the other experiences, in addition to many of those, are aligned to what Brad had shared. I think one that really just resonates and sticks out with me that we heard from another client of ours a couple months ago was this was a member that had real negative experiences and gave up on healthcare. And then they learned about included health through their Pride ERG. And they said, you know what, I'll give it another try. This sounds interesting. I'll at least have a conversation with my care coordinator. And really, that's a great first step. Just have a conversation with your care coordinator to understand and maybe put together a plan and move kind of at a pace that you feel comfortable with. Our care coordinator sought to understand what this member was looking for. We take this high touch concierge approach to personalization. So the care coordinator was seeking to understand what matters to this member and the provider. Does race, ethnicity, does gender, does sexual orientation, the type of provider, how long they've been practicing, distance from their home or office, taking into all of that information so then they could come up with this expert match of options that fits the member's criteria to ensure they feel comfortable and excited about this appointment. So we were able to provide that information, 3 different options. The member reviewed them, said, wow, nobody's ever done this for me. The member felt really comfortable about picking one of them. We helped schedule the appointment. We take that burden off of your plate. So helped schedule the appointment, got the member set up for success. They were a little bit apprehensive going into the appointment. The care coordinator was there to support and coach them. Went into the appointment, and then this member called their care coordinator as they were leaving the office, and you could just tell they had this giant smile on their face saying, wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much. You have helped change the trajectory of my healthcare for the rest of my life, because now I'm bought back in. I know what good healthcare looks like and feels like, and that was it. And they said, what else have I been missing? What other appointments can you help me with that I've been missing over the past 6 or 8 years? So I think that's just a really good story to kind of encompass really the essence and opportunity that we can do here. Again, for complex, for more routine and simple things. But just goes to show that we're there for all members of the community to support, regardless of what the health or need might be.
That's truly amazing. And I mean, especially with an example like that, that's life-saving, right? If you are avoiding medical care for years due to that lack of trust, that increased fear, to be able to sort of take that step, yeah, absolutely is incredibly impressive. So hearing these stories absolutely makes this worth it. I do think in addition to these success stories, I do think it's important that we spend a few minutes talking about the very sobering and real challenges that many members of our community continue to face in their pursuit of healthcare or their ability to simply live their fullest lives. And so, as perhaps you know, the ACLU is currently tracking, I believe, more than 400 anti-LGBTQ plus bills across the country. And so Brad, for example, is an employer that operates in every US state, I believe, and certainly across the globe. What are your thoughts on this? And what role can an employer play amidst all of this legislative turmoil?
I'll go one step further than just legislative turmoil, right? It's as great as, and we've talked great this whole webinar, as great as our benefits are and the experiences our employees are now having in the US, it is not that way globally. So legislation aside, it is not like the US and everywhere else. It is the US and every other country, because every other country has its own medical practices, insurance agencies, legislation around how the medical policies work, policies, practices. And so I can't just roll out what we've rolled out in the US everywhere tomorrow. It's like one country at a time. And in any given country, I can have an insurance company say, yes, I'll do this, but there may be no providers. There may be no qualified medical people to do that. And there's no included health anywhere I've looked around the world beyond the US. So well beyond the legislation, one thing I've realized over the last couple of years as we've rolled out this suite of new enhancements is we have to work even harder everywhere else to be able to get to our 290,000 employees around the world. And then we face all of the legislative issues. And the legislative issues, like even a couple of weeks ago in one of our beautiful US states, they pretty much ban gender affirming care for everyone at every age. So, what do we do? And I can't even easily just say, since, we provide financial support for them to cross over into the next state, this one particular state is surrounded by other bad states, except for on one border. So what we need to do is continue to work really hard to ensure we can provide every possible option for our employees to get the care they need. In some cases, that will be helping them find roles in places where they can actually get that care more easily. In other cases, it's like paying for transportation to get somewhere where they can. So it is constant, our need to evolve what we're doing in this space as things evolve around us, and not always in a good way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Colin, sort of similar question to you, knowing Included Health is operating in the United States, I'm curious how this anti-LGBTQ sort of legislative landscape shapes your work, and what types of questions your clients might be asking you related to this legislation and its impact on healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question, and I think your point is the right one there. It's a sobering reality, and it's quite unfortunate that politicians are getting in the way of evidence-based medicine with this, and getting in the way of a provider and patient or family's decision to access that quality care. What we are seeing, you're absolutely right. Our clients are reaching out to us left and right to understand, okay, how does this potentially impact our ability to serve their members? How does it impact the benefits that might be available? What should they be thinking about doing and putting in place to ensure this does not limit access for their employees? So this is an opportunity that our client success team can be that extension, can be that thought partner, can be kind of that consultative support to the benefits team to help them think through and assess where are your employees, what are the state by state regulations, and how does this impact that, and what are some best practices, again, that we're seeing across the industry. So I'd say a lot of the questions are, what can we do to support? And from an included health perspective, absolutely, we are going to continue to be there to navigate members. If access to care is no longer legal within your state, we're going to help navigate you to a nearby state to where you can get access to that life-saving and evidence-based care. To Brad's point, we're recommending employers and benefits teams assess their travel and relocation policies, make sure that they work and transcend across legislative bills and new regulations. It's one of the, we can't predict what the future is going to look like. So it's one of those things that let's be as aggressive and as robust as we can in our travel and relocation benefits to ensure that they work within the current environment, but also anything that may come in the future, and be open to continuing to adjust and update that, because some of the travel policies today don't work for employees. They don't work for families and members. So even by having a travel policy, we need to critically look at it through the lens of, can my employees still take advantage and utilize that policy? And if not, maybe providing relocation assistance to a state that access to care is legal and is safe.
Absolutely. So I really like that. Yes, assessing your travel and relocation policies, certainly understanding the landscape of what are the sort of anti-LGBTQ bills and what is a cultural climate in those particular spaces in which you operate. It's a really good point. And sort of, Colin, related to that, if an organization is in their early stages of awareness, I think part of the conversation we've been having here, as Brad referenced, you all have been working together for some time. There's still more work to be done, but are pretty well advanced in this. So what about our audience? If someone is in the early stages of awareness and even starting to assess their offerings, starting to explore how inclusive or not are we, what are some of the things that they should keep in mind? What are some to-dos that they must take into account as they're starting that assessment?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a rather I don't want to say it's not an involved process, but it's a thoughtful process that you want to go through, right? So I would say there's a couple different dimensions you want to look at. Is one, use your own employee data and experience to help inform. It's the best information is oftentimes within your own workforce. So if it's a benefits team asking this question, go ask the question to your Pride ERG leaders and maybe have a listening session with them to understand, hey, how are benefits meeting your needs today? What are some of the experiences or gaps or not nice to haves, but enhancements that would be really important. And then for that benefits team to conduct what we call a benefits equity assessment, I always encourage them to ask 3 questions. Are all of your employees able to access your benefits in the same way? Do they all have the same experience that you intended? And do they all have equal outcomes or equitable outcomes within those benefits? Oftentimes, whenever they run kind of a particular benefit or the existing benefits through that, they will find there are certain member populations that are having suboptimal barriers, poor experience, or worse outcomes. And then they need to really focus in those areas to say, okay, can we enhance this benefit, or is there another offering out there to really drive to equitable benefits? It's not about equal, as we said. It's not saying just because you have one benefit in place and it's equal across, that does not mean everyone's going to have the same experience and outcome, right? So you might need to do more for one population or even more for a different population to ensure we have equitable or equality across all. So I would say those are a couple places to initially start. And then Brad touched on this as well. Leverage the power of Out and Equal and your fellow ERG or BRG members, those that may be a little bit further down the path than you, and say, hey, what did, having like hindsight is 2020, what do you wish you knew when we were going through this? Or do you have any recommendations for us as far as best practices? So then you can kind of leapfrog or get a little bit further along in the process. It's just such a powerful network. And I can imagine there will be so many Pride ERG leaders that would be happy to have that conversation and share those best practices.
Absolutely. Those are really, really good tips for our audience. Thank you for that, Colin. Brad, what about you? Do you have any tips for organizations that are just now starting to explore these offerings?
Sure. I mean, everything Colin said for sure, right? Listen to your employees. While you're listening, I would add it is as important in talking to your LGBTQ plus employees as it is talking to allies, because so many of us are parents, family members, neighbors. They have to be brought along on this journey. These things will be hugely beneficial to them. Colin spoke to the advocacy part of what they do before. It is critically important. Also, LGBTQ plus talent is going to expect this for their prospective employees. This is like more important than ever. So your companies need to be able to walk the walk, no longer just talk the talk. So you're going to have to be able to like express the tangible ways your organization is living up to any of its spoken commitments. And benefits are key. Like people often, part of their assessment when they join a company is, can I live the life I want to live as healthy as I need to be in this company, because I'm going to be able to receive the benefits that I need to live that life. So if you don't have success stories or data to back up your commitments, you need to build them. You need to be able to share the goals and actions you're taking to achieve them. Transparency is going to be key, and your future workforce will depend on it.
A really good point, particularly around talent. Yeah, this is something that folks are looking for when considering new employers. And to your point about allies, considering allies as well, Brad, I think it's important to highlight for our audience the role that LGBTQ plus allies play in fostering this level of inclusion. For example, millennial allies and Gen Z allies place a lot of value on LGBTQ inclusive benefits and policies, and will walk away from employers that don't have that, even if they themselves are not directly impacted. So we really see allies sort of walking the talk, so to speak, right, in these spaces. And
Yeah, Isabel, do you mind if I jump in? Because I completely agree. And that's such a great point that you all are talking about around allies and around the aspects of talent acquisition and retention. Because this is so important to so many employers currently, we're starting to get this question to say, hey, can you run a study for us on this to understand the impact of benefits on employees' belief in the company and more in their likeliness to stay? What we found in running the study is LGBTQ plus individuals rank benefits much higher than the broader population does when they're looking at assessing leaving or accepting a new job. So benefits weighs highly within our decision making of accepting or changing jobs. Number two, to your point about allies and others, not just those from the community, view this as important from a benefits perspective, where 80% of people saying they have higher respect for their employer by offering a benefit like included health. Not saying they would ever use it or need it, but I'm just so much more proud to work in an organization like this. And then 60% of people saying they're more likely to stay at their current employer because they have an offering and a rich benefits offering like this, to Brad's point, so we can be our truest, healthiest selves.
Thank you for sharing that data. That's really interesting. And yeah, absolutely reinforces the need to make this visible, not just to the LGBTQ plus community, but to all of your employees. It really does help foster belonging for everyone. So again, thank you both for sharing. I think we're coming up on time. So I have maybe just one more question before we wrap up. I'd love to get some key takeaways from each of you. So Brad, maybe I'll start with you. What are your top 2 or 3 things that you would recommend a company do to create a more inclusive and welcoming culture for their LGBTQ plus employees?
I could go on forever.
It's a whole separate webinar.
It is a whole separate webinar, but policies and practices are key, right? Your company has to be able to stand behind its anti-discrimination policies and practices, first and foremost. I've worked on ours for decades. to cover every aspect of sexual orientation, gender identity. Every aspect of our community is covered in our anti-discrimination policy. And then that then moves on to benefits and practices and training. And, we think of all the investment we make in marginalized communities for recruiting and talent development and retention and promotion and mobility. And, for us, given the focus through my office and our community, LGBTQ plus is now equally looked at with every other underrepresented group. So it is so important that everyone brings everything about themselves to work so that they could be their best selves, so that they could be innovative, creative, productive, so that they stay and they deliver. And so anything you could do to advance that is the right thing to do.
Really, thank you for that, Brad. And Colin, any tips you'd like to add?
Yeah, Brad covered a lot of them. I think in summarizing that, the time is now, right? Strike now. Don't wait until a perfect moment, because there's never going to be a perfect moment, right? The needs are there. The data suggests that everything that Brad talked about, more inclusive and healthier workplaces are going to lead to greater collaboration, greater creativity, greater productivity, more presenteeism for the workforce, and then of course, better overall business outcomes for the business. So there's a clear case study or ROI case study from a business perspective, on top of being an employer of choice, on top of creating better, healthy experiences for employees and healthier outcomes. So I would say on top of that, cannot stress this relationship between benefits and ERG or BRGs enough. If you don't have a great relationship today, go ahead and start fostering and build that relationship. It's going to make both departments and both groups' lives that much easier and better. And then I like what Brad was talking about, recruit allies. We need more joining this effort and being there to understand and support. So whether it's from a ERG, BRG perspective or on the benefit side, let's focus on bringing in more allies to that and leaning on those other groups within our networks, to other kind of ERGs that have kind of seen this play already run, to be able to learn those best practices and share those. It's not necessarily needing to reinvent or recreate the wheel here.
Yeah, the time is now. I like that. And absolutely building those better relationships, those bridges between the resource groups and benefits will be key. If I can answer my own question, I would certainly also tell our listeners to, as Brad mentioned, to draw on Out and Equal to support you. We have a number of resources, can leverage our global hub to connect with each other, use the message board to ask, who else is struggling with this? Who's got a really successful experience getting benefits to onboard? This is where folks can share their case studies. You can have a discussion and analyze and sort of get connected and build those relationships and make this change happen. So again, this was just such a great discussion. This pretty much wraps up our conversation for today. We're at the top of the hour. Any questions that came in via chat, we will happily follow up with you after. Make sure that the recording is available for posterity. Again, thank you everybody for joining, and join me in thanking Colin and Brad for sharing your expertise with us today. Really grateful for your time. And again, thank you for joining today's webinar.
Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you for having us.
Bye-bye.